She was auctioned as a slave, and the next day her life changed forever. She was born in a small, forgotten village where life moved slowly and hardship moved fast. The houses were made of mud and old bricks, and when it rained, water leaked through the roofs. People there woke up before sunrise, not because they wanted to, but because hunger did not allow them to sleep any longer. From a young age, she learned that life was not kind, especially to girls like her. Her parents died when she was still very young. She barely remembered their faces, only the feeling of warmth she once had when her mother held her close. After their death, she was sent to live with distant relatives. They never treated her like their own child. To them, she was extra work, extra food, and extra responsibility. They reminded her every day that she should be grateful they allowed her to stay. She worked from morning till night. Cleaning, cooking, carrying water, washing clothes, her hands were always busy. When she made a mistake, she was scolded. When she was tired, no one cared. She never went to school. She would watch other children walk past the house with books in their hands and wonder what it felt like to sit in a classroom. But dreams were dangerous things in her world, so she slowly stopped dreaming. As she grew older, the situation became worse. Food became scarce, and money was always a problem. Her relatives argued about debts almost every night. She often heard her name mentioned in whispers, followed by heavy silence. She did not know what those whispers meant, but they filled her with fear. One morning, she was told to get ready. They said she was going to work in the city, that she would earn money and help the family. The way they spoke sounded forced, but she had no right to question them. She owned only one old dress. She washed it carefully and wore it, her hands shaking slightly. Deep inside, she felt something was wrong, but she pushed the feeling away. They traveled for hours. The village disappeared behind them, replaced by busy roads and unfamiliar faces. The city was loud, crowded, and overwhelming. She stayed close, afraid of getting lost. Her relatives did not speak much. Their silence felt heavier than words. When they reached the marketplace, her heart started racing. It was full of people shouting, bargaining, and pointing. The smell of sweat and dust filled the air. She was told to stand in one place and wait. Confused, she did as she was told. People began to look at her, not at her face, but at her body, her hands, her posture. Their eyes made her uncomfortable. Then she heard numbers being called out. At first, she did not understand. She thought maybe it was about goods being sold nearby. But slowly, painfully, the truth began to sink in. They were talking about her. Her legs felt weak. Her mouth went dry. She turned to her relatives, hoping to see denial, anger, or even shame. Instead, she saw relief. That hurt more than anything else. She wanted to scream, to run, to beg them to stop, but fear locked her voice inside her chest. People discussed her as if she were not there. Some shook their heads. Some nodded. Some spoke casually, like they were choosing an item, not deciding a human life. She felt smaller with every second that passed. Her entire existence was reduced to a price. She remembered her mother's voice from long ago, telling her that every human life had value. Standing there, she felt like that value had been erased. Tears burned her eyes, but she did not let them fall. Crying had never helped her before. When the final call was made, everything happened quickly. Money exchanged hands. Her relatives stepped away without looking back. That moment broke something inside her. Even though life had been cruel, a small part of her had believed that blood still meant something. That belief died right there. She was handed over to a stranger. She did not know his name. She did not know where she was going. All she knew was that her life no longer belonged to her. Fear wrapped around her heart like a tight rope, making it hard to breathe. As she was led away from the marketplace, the noise slowly faded, but the pain grew louder inside her. She felt numb, as if her body was moving but her soul had stayed behind. She did not fight. She did not speak. She simply followed because she had learned that resistance often brought more suffering. In her mind, she prepared herself for a future she could not imagine but deeply feared. She thought of endless days with no escape, no choices, and no hope. The world had shown her its darkest face, and she believed this was all life had to offer her. Yet, even as despair filled her heart, she did not know that this moment, the worst day of her life, was quietly leading her toward a change she could never have predicted. The journey away from the marketplace felt unreal. She sat quietly, her hands folded tightly in her lap, afraid to move or speak. Every bump on the road made her heart jump. The city lights slowly disappeared, replaced by dark roads and long stretches of silence. She tried to count her breaths to calm herself, but fear kept pulling her thoughts in different directions. She kept asking herself where she was being taken. Would it be a small room, a locked place, a life where days and nights would lose meaning? Her mind created many frightening pictures, and each one felt heavier than the last. She wanted to cry, but her body felt stiff, as if tears were stuck somewhere deep inside her. The man who had taken her did not speak much. He drove calmly, his face serious but not angry. That confused her. She had expected shouting, harsh words, or threats. Instead, there was silence. Still, she did not relax. Silence could be just as frightening as noise. After a long drive, they reached a quiet area. The house they stopped at was simple, not large or fancy, but clean and well kept. A small light was on near the door. When they entered, she noticed something strange. The door was not locked behind her. She was told to sit and rest. The words were polite, almost gentle. Her body remained tense, ready for something bad to happen at any moment. She sat on the edge of the chair, afraid to touch anything. Everything felt unfamiliar, the smell of the room, the soft light, even the quiet. Someone brought her food, real food, warm and fresh. She stared at it for a long time. Hunger pulled at her stomach, but fear stopped her hands. She did not know if she was allowed to eat or if this was some kind of test. When she was told again calmly to eat, she slowly reached for the plate. Each bite felt strange. She had eaten scraps most of her life, never enough to feel full. This food tasted different. It tasted like care, and that scared her more than hunger ever had. She kept expecting something bad to follow, like it always had before. That night, she was shown a small room. It had a clean bed, a blanket, and a window. She stood there, unsure what to do. She had never slept alone in a quiet place before. Silence filled the room, pressing against her ears. When she finally lay down, sleep did not come. Her eyes stayed open, staring at the ceiling. Every sound made her sit up. Her body was exhausted, but her mind refused to rest. She replayed the day over and over, especially the moment her relatives walked away. Questions filled her head. Why had she been brought here? Why was no one hurting her? Was this kindness real, or just a calm before something worse? She did not know which answer frightened her more. She hugged the blanket tightly, as if it could protect her. Memories from her childhood returned, moments when she had felt safe for a short time before that safety was taken away. She had learned not to trust calm moments because they never lasted. Hours passed slowly. At some point, tears finally came. Silent tears. She did not make a sound. Crying loudly had never helped her before, so she cried quietly, letting the pain fall without asking for comfort. Morning came gently. Sunlight slipped through the window and touched her face. She had barely slept, but the light felt different. It did not feel threatening. For a moment, she forgot where she was and then remembered everything at once. She sat up quickly, her heart racing again. She listened carefully. The house was quiet but not empty. She could hear distant movement, soft footsteps, and the sound of water somewhere. Life was happening calmly without her being pulled into fear. Soon, she was called to come outside. Her legs felt weak as she stood. Every step felt heavy, like she was walking toward something unknown. She prepared herself for bad news, for rules, for demands she could not refuse. But instead of harsh words, she was spoken to calmly. She was asked how she felt. No one had asked her that in years. The question confused her so much that she did not know how to answer. How did she feel? Afraid, tired, empty, and lost, but she could not find the words. She noticed small details. No one raised their voice. No one stood too close. She was not rushed. These small things slowly disturbed her fear, not because they felt safe, but because they were unfamiliar. She was told she could wash, rest, and take time. Time. The idea felt strange. Her life had always been about rushing, obeying, and surviving. Having time felt like a luxury she did not deserve. Throughout the day, she stayed quiet, watching everything carefully. She expected kindness to disappear at any moment. She waited for anger, for orders, for control. But none came. Inside her, a battle was happening. One part of her wanted to believe that something was different. Another part warned her not to trust it. That second part was louder. It had kept her alive for years. As evening came again, she realized something important. The night before, she had prepared herself for pain. She had promised herself not to hope, but the day had passed without harm. That confused her more than fear ever had. She did not feel free. She did not feel safe. But for the first time in a very long time, she felt something else, uncertainty mixed with a small, fragile question. What if tomorrow was not like yesterday? The next morning began quietly, just like the one before. She woke up slowly, unsure where she was for a few seconds. Then memory returned, heavy and sharp. Her body became tense again. She sat up on the bed and waited, listening. Nothing bad happened. No one rushed in. No one shouted. After some time, she was asked to come to the main room. Her steps were careful. She kept her eyes low, the way she had learned to do over the years. She expected instructions, rules, or demands. Instead, she was offered a seat and a warm drink. Her hands shook as she held the cup. The man sat across from her, not too close. His voice was calm. He asked her name again, slowly, as if it mattered. When she answered, he repeated it carefully, making sure he said it right. That small act touched something deep inside her, something she had forgotten existed. He told her she was safe here. The word safe sounded strange in her ears. She had heard promises before, but they always broke. She did not respond. She simply listened, her eyes searching his face for signs of lies or hidden anger. Then he said something that made her heart stop for a moment. He told her she was not owned. He said she did not belong to anyone. He explained that what had happened to her was wrong and that she should never have been treated that way. Her mind struggled to understand his words. Wrong. People like her were always treated this way. That was how the world worked, at least the world she knew. She waited for him to change his words, to reveal the truth behind them. But he did not. He spoke slowly, carefully, as if he did not want to scare her. He told her that he had been working for many years to help people who had been trapped in unfair situations. He said he had seen too much pain and could no longer look away. She listened without interrupting. Her face remained still, but inside, everything was shaking. She wanted to believe him. She wanted to ask questions, but fear held her tongue. Hope felt dangerous, like stepping onto weak ground. Then came the words she never expected to hear. He told her she was free to leave if she wanted. Free. The word echoed in her mind again and again. She looked at the door, then back at him. Leave? Where would she go? She had no home, no money, no one waiting for her. Her silence answered the question before she could speak. He nodded gently, as if he understood. He said there was no hurry. She could stay as long as she needed. There was help available, legal help, support, and people who would listen to her story when she was ready. Tears filled her eyes before she could stop them. This time, she did not hide them. They fell freely, one after another. She did not know why she was crying. Maybe it was relief. Maybe it was confusion. Maybe it was the pain of realizing how badly she had been treated all her life. No one told her to stop crying. No one looked away. Someone quietly placed a tissue near her. That simple kindness broke the last wall inside her. She covered her face and cried harder, her shoulders shaking. After some time, the tears slowed. She felt drained but lighter, as if something heavy had been lifted from her chest. She was given space, not questions. That mattered more than she could explain. Later that day, she met others who worked there. They spoke kindly and moved carefully around her as if they knew how fragile she felt. No one forced her to talk. No one pushed her to smile. She was allowed to just be. She was taken to see a doctor not because she was sick, but because her health mattered. That idea surprised her. Her body had always been something she used for work, never something anyone cared about. The doctor spoke gently and explained everything before doing it. That respect felt new and strange. In the following days, she learned small truths, little by little. The place she was in was meant to protect people like her. Many others had passed through these doors, carrying stories full of pain and loss. Some had stayed. Some had moved on. All had been given a choice. Choice. That word stayed with her. She had lived her entire life without choices. Even simple ones like what to eat or when to rest were decided by others. Now she was being asked what she wanted. The question felt too big. At night, she lay awake thinking. If she was free, who was she? Without orders, without fear guiding every step, she felt lost. Painful memories returned, but this time they did not crush her completely. They passed through her mind like storms that no longer destroyed everything. One evening, she finally asked a question. Her voice was soft, almost unsure. "Why help me?" she asked. "You don't know me." The answer was simple. Because no one should be treated as less than human. Because turning away would have been easier but wrong. She did not fully understand it, but something inside her accepted it. Not completely, not yet, but enough to keep listening. Days turned into a week. Her body slowly relaxed. Her shoulders were no longer always raised. She began to sleep a little better. She still jumped at sudden sounds, still expected kindness to end, but the fear no longer controlled every breath. One morning, she was told that steps were being taken to make sure what had happened to her would not define her future. Papers were being prepared. People were speaking on her behalf. She did not have to face everything alone. When she heard this, she felt something new rise inside her. It was small, quiet, but powerful. A feeling she had never allowed herself to feel before. Hope. It did not erase her past. It did not promise an easy future. But it stood there, steady and real, whispering that her life was not over. For the first time since she could remember, she looked at the next day without fear. She did not know what would happen. She did not know where she would end up. But she knew one thing for sure. The person she had been forced to become was no longer the only person she could be. The days that followed were unlike anything she had ever known. For the first time in her life, she had choices. She could decide when to eat, when to sleep, and when to speak. Every small decision felt strange and heavy, like learning to walk on new ground. She had never been allowed to choose before, and at first, the freedom felt frightening. Her mornings began slowly. She would wake up and sit by the window, watching the sunlight touch the walls and the world outside. Birds flew past, and people walked on the street below. Simple things she had always taken for granted suddenly seemed extraordinary. She tried to hold onto these moments, to remind herself that she was safe. But safety did not erase the years of fear. She often found herself frozen in corners, thinking of what might happen if she made a mistake. Old habits die hard. Years of being controlled and silenced could not be erased in a single day. She struggled to trust anyone, even the people who had saved her. Every kind word made her hesitate, wondering if it was real or another trick. She was given books to read. At first, the letters and words seemed strange. She had never been to school, never learned to read properly. But slowly, page by page, she began to understand. The words opened new worlds to her. She read about people who had faced challenges and overcome them. She read about kindness and courage, things she had barely seen in her own life. Reading became a refuge, a place where she could escape the heavy shadows of her past. Alongside learning, She received support from counselors who helped her understand her feelings. They listened patiently as she spoke about her past, never judging or rushing her. At first, she spoke little. Sharing her story felt like opening a wound that had never healed. But each time she told a part of it, she felt a small relief, as if she were letting go of a piece of the fear that had weighed her down for so long. She began to notice small changes in herself. She could laugh at little things. A bird landing on the windowsill, the smell of fresh bread, the way sunlight made the room warm, these small joys started to return. It was not happiness in the way she had imagined it, but it was a start. She realized that life could offer moments that were not painful or frightening, and that was a powerful realization. One day, she met other survivors who had gone through similar experiences. Their stories were different, but the pain was the same. She listened to them carefully, realizing that she was not alone. They laughed, cried, and shared their dreams with each other. In their company, she felt a sense of belonging that she had never known. The feeling was both comforting and frightening, comforting because she was not alone, frightening because it reminded her how long she had been isolated. Together, they started small projects. Some learned to cook, some learned to read and write, and some helped with organizing their daily lives. She joined in, learning new skills and discovering abilities she had never known she possessed. Each small achievement built her confidence. Slowly, she began to believe that she could create a life for herself beyond fear and survival. She also began to reflect on her past. Painful memories surfaced, and she did not run from them. Instead, she acknowledged them and let herself feel the sadness, anger, and loss. This was difficult, but she realized that facing her past was necessary to move forward. The counselors helped her understand that her past did not define her. She was not her fear, her pain, or her suffering. She was a person capable of growth, courage, and change. As the months passed, she started making plans for the future. She dreamed of a small home, of learning a skill that could support her, and of helping others who had suffered as she had. These dreams were fragile at first, easily broken by doubt, but they became stronger each day. For the first time, she felt that the future was something she could shape, not something that happened to her. She also began to help new arrivals at the place that had saved her. She shared her experiences, guiding them through the fear and confusion she had once felt. Each time she helped someone, she felt a sense of purpose that she had never known. Her pain was still there, but it no longer controlled her life. Instead, it became a source of strength, a reminder that survival could be transformed into courage. One evening, as she looked out at the sunset, she realized how far she had come. The girl who had been sold, who had walked through fear and darkness every day, was now standing on the edge of a new life. She had learned to trust, to hope, and to believe in her own strength. The journey was not over, but she had taken the first steps toward freedom in a way she had never imagined. She understood that life was not perfect. There would always be moments of fear, doubt, and sadness. But now she had tools, support, and knowledge to face them. She had learned that survival was not just about living through pain. It was about finding small joys, creating meaning, and building a future. By helping others, learning new skills, and trusting herself, she began to feel a sense of identity that had been stolen from her long ago. She was no longer just a victim of her past. She was becoming a person who could make choices, face challenges, and create hope. This transformation was slow, sometimes painful, but it was real. As she went to bed that night, she felt a quiet satisfaction. Not joy, not triumph, but a steady calm that she had never known. She realized that she was no longer just surviving. She was living. Step by step, day by day, she was learning to reclaim her life. And in that reclamation, she discovered the most important truth, that even after the darkest times, growth and healing are possible. The years that followed were filled with challenges, but they were different from the struggles of her early life. Now, she faced obstacles with choice, courage, and support rather than fear and helplessness. Every morning, she woke up knowing that her life belonged to her. That simple thought was revolutionary. For the first time, she did not have to obey anyone blindly, and every decision she made carried weight and meaning. She continued her learning, gradually mastering reading, writing, and even basic math. What had once seemed impossible now felt achievable. Books became her companions, and every story she read gave her courage. She learned about people who had overcome hardships far greater than hers. She realized that while she could not change the past, she could shape her future, one step at a time. Soon, she began to share her story with others. At first, it was terrifying. Speaking about the pain she had endured made her relive it, and the memories threatened to overwhelm her. But she found strength in knowing that her experiences could help someone else. She spoke to new survivors who had come through the doors of the organization that had saved her. She guided them gently, offering kindness, understanding, and patience. Her presence alone reassured them that life could be different, even after suffering. Her role as a mentor gave her purpose. She organized small workshops, teaching literacy and basic life skills to survivors who had never had access to education. Each time someone learned to read a sentence or cook a simple meal, she felt a quiet triumph. She understood how transformative these small victories were because she had lived through a life without them. Slowly, she began to see that her past, once a source of shame and fear, was now a tool to empower others. She also became involved in advocacy. She spoke to local communities, schools, and even officials about the dangers of exploitation and the importance of protecting vulnerable individuals. Every speech she gave was rooted in truth and lived experience, and people listened because they knew she spoke from the heart. Her voice, once silenced by fear and oppression, became a source of change. Her story inspired others to act, to care, and to question injustice in their own lives. Despite all these accomplishments, she never forgot the small, quiet victories in her daily life. Cooking her own meals, walking through the streets without fear, laughing with friends, these things were once unimaginable. She treasured them deeply, understanding how simple moments could feel extraordinary when life had once been filled only with fear. There were difficult days too. Memories of her past still returned unexpectedly, triggered by a smell, a sound, or a passing glance. Sometimes nightmares woke her in the middle of the night, but now she faced them differently. She spoke about her feelings, sought help when she needed it, and reminded herself that she was no longer powerless. The past had shaped her, but it no longer defined her. Over time, she made new friends and built a chosen family. These were people who respected her, encouraged her, and supported her dreams. She learned to trust slowly, understanding that trust was earned, not given. Her relationships were different from the ones she had known in her childhood, based on respect and care rather than control and fear. In these connections, she found joy, laughter, and belonging. One of the most significant changes in her life was learning to dream again. As a child and teenager, she had never allowed herself to imagine a future beyond survival. Now, she thought about owning a small home, learning a trade, helping others, and traveling. Each dream was a seed she nurtured carefully. They gave her hope and motivated her to continue growing. She also reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the day she was sold, the fear, the silence, and the despair. But she remembered something else too, the moment she met the man who treated her with respect and helped her find freedom. That act of kindness had changed the course of her life. It reminded her that a single decision by one person could alter the lives of many. It also inspired her to continue helping others, to be that person for someone else. Eventually, she started working with organizations focused on rescuing and rehabilitating survivors. She helped create programs, planned educational activities, and guided new arrivals. Each life she touched felt like a confirmation of her own journey. She was no longer a victim. She was a guide, a mentor, a source of hope. Her impact grew beyond the immediate circle of the organization. Communities began to recognize her efforts. People started calling her to share their own stories of injustice or to ask for advice. Her voice, once silenced by fear, became one of power, courage, and change. She realized that her suffering had not been in vain. It had prepared her to become a beacon for others. Despite her accomplishments, she remained humble. She knew that every survivor had a unique story, and each required patience and understanding. She approached her work with empathy and care, never imposing her experiences but using them as a bridge to connect with others. Her presence was calm but powerful, offering reassurance in a world that had often been harsh. As the years passed, she saw real transformations in the lives of those she helped. Children who had never held a pencil learned to write their names. Young women who had been silenced found their voices. Survivors who had lived in fear for years began to smile again. Witnessing these changes filled her heart with a quiet, steady joy. She also built a life for herself beyond her work. She had a small, modest home filled with warmth and light. She planted flowers, cooked meals she enjoyed, and spent evenings reading or walking outside. These simple routines reminded her that life could be gentle and nurturing, not just a struggle to survive. Reflecting on her journey, she realized the full scope of her transformation. The girl who had been sold, who had lived in fear, who had been silenced and powerless, had become a woman with purpose, agency, and hope. She had transformed her suffering into strength, her fear into courage, and her past into a tool for helping others. She understood that life would never be perfect. Challenges would continue to arise, and memories of the past would occasionally resurface. But she had learned how to face them with resilience, support, and self-belief. She no longer allowed fear to dictate her life. Instead, she allowed hope, purpose, and compassion to guide her steps. Looking back, she saw a clear path from darkness to light. The day she had been sold had seemed like the end, but it had marked the beginning of a new journey. The kindness of one person had opened the door to freedom. Her courage, resilience, and willingness to grow had allowed her to step through it and create a life she could call her own. And so, her story came full circle. She was once a girl with no voice, no choice, and no hope. Now she was a woman with a voice, a purpose, and the power to inspire change. She had turned the darkest moment of her life into a source of strength, proving that even in the most desperate situations, transformation, healing, and hope were possible. Her life had changed forever, not because of the cruelty she had endured, but because she had found freedom, support, and the courage to rise. She had become proof that no matter how dark the past, the future could still hold light, and that one act of kindness, combined with personal courage, could truly reshape a life.